What's up, JEFusion fans? This is Philip, and welcome back to another video. So, this time, again, we're going to talk about Kingohger. Now, I think it's still quite early, but come to think of it, anyways, there's just about a couple of months left. So, the show is almost over. So, with that said, I'm going to probably too. It's probably too early to say this, but you know, I could just put a clip of the meme, but I personally want to say it myself though, and I just want to say that King Odor is the goat, the goat. So, with that said, here are some reasons why I think King Odor could probably be the greatest Super Sentai show so far. Um, in a previous video, I talked about why I love Shinkenger, and probably, it's still one of my favorite Sentais, and probably for the time, you know, you could say it was the goat as well. Uh, I'm pretty sure there are still a lot of Shinkenger fans out there, and they would say that Shinkenger is the goat, but you know, uh, times change, and like even if I say that Shinkenger is S tier 5 out of 5, in my opinion, but considering the scale of what King Oger did, like it's on a completely different level, and you know, uh, most likely with the advancement of technology and changes in like story writing, and again, basically like new technology being implemented, so they were able to create uh, a story that's never been seen before. Now, uh, I've mentioned earlier that it's too early to say if King Oger is like the greatest Super Sentai of all time, so far at least. But you know, even if let's say the ending would be quite disappointing, if you look at each and every episode of King Oger until now, like there's nothing for me to complain about in general. Probably some points that I wish they had more impact here and there, but like overall, you know, King Oger is simply the best. Anyways, with that said, here are some reasons why I think King Oger is the GOAT. So, first off, they have a very unique world. So, I probably already mentioned it way, way long ago in the times of like before the show even aired, or at least when the first episode aired and I had my first impressions of the actual show. So the world of King Oger, or the story of King Oger, takes place in a parallel, not really a parallel universe. Well, you can say it's a parallel universe, I guess, but they're on a completely different planet. Now, thanks to the King Oger Kyoryuger team up, rather, they were able to connect King Oger with the canonical Super Sentai universe, which kind of also explains how they would be able to team up, or how uh, the King Oger Robo or the King Oger Mecha actually appeared in Dawn Brothers, way before the series even started. So again, there's that, and also it, uh, you know, opens up opportunities for the King Ogres to be able to team up with other Sentai teams. Let's say in I don't know, like a couple of years, once the you know next anniversary versus Sentai team up comes out. So yeah, but even without that connection to the canonical Super Sentai world, so uh, if you take that away, or the Kyoryuger team up never happened, like it's still a very good standalone Super Sentai. Um, Although I think originally Super Sentai shows were meant to be standalone, especially in the Showa era, which is why again there are no connections unless you count like Denjiman and Sun Vulcan, which were supposed to be like you know directly connected to each other, with Sun Vulcan supposedly being the first Sentai to be a sequel of another team, which was Denjiman. But you know, again, uh, they didn't you know do that a lot, or almost they didn't do that at all, with the exception of Queen Hadrian from Denjiman appearing again in Sun Vulcan. That was the only actual connection we see in the show. But nonetheless, it was a concept. But other than that, up until uh, Super Sentai team ups were introduced in the 90s, like you probably would have thought that each Super Sentai was standalone. And again, I understand that concept, but with the advent of, I believe the very first team up was uh, O Ranger versus Kaku Ranger, but yeah. So when it started, so we kind of seen a unified Super Sentai universe up until at least, what Go Buster, no, like uh Geoger. So I was trying to remember that, but yeah, up until Geoger, like we did have a somewhat more cohesive, united or unified Super Sentai universe, and then Q Ranger seems to be a Super Sentai that can stand alone by itself, but again, going back to like Pato Ranger, and then going into the uh, I believe also New Soldier. Again, we go back to this Super Sentai verse that's more familiar. But yeah, uh, the world of King Oger is so unique that it allows a lot of opportunity for unique and original story writing, because we know how this world works. And the Super Sentai stories that we have seen so far, like, yeah, you have your typical good versus evil plot, a team of spandex wearing heroes fight monsters that grow into giants, and they have to fight those giant monsters with their giant robots as well. But other than that, it's still the same world. It's basically still the world that we're living in, and we know the ins and outs of it. But, with King Oger's world building, they are able to create very interesting settings. Well, of course, how where they shoot for actual locations, you know, um, like outdoor locations. It's still in Japan, of course, but using CG to its full effect, uh, they are able to create very interesting locations. I would say, especially with the Nkosopa and Gokkan, which were supposed to be, again, like Nkosopa is supposed to be like a high tech city. So It's filled with a lot of neon lights, electricity, and so on. And Gokkan is supposed to be a country that's perpetually snowing, at least most of the time, because during episode 38 we do see some sunny days in Gokkan, but it's still covered in snow nonetheless. Uh, and you can see like a lot of machinery in Shugodam, and so on, right? So the world of King Oger is very interesting and unique, that allows for a lot of stories to be written in a way that you know makes the viewer curious, like, ooh, what kind of country is Shugodam, what kind of country is Gokkan, like how do the people live their lives there, like you get to see some of the details that you probably wouldn't uh, realize, uh, because you're living in the same world as the teams. Like, oh, it's just Japan, like everyday life is just how the way we live, except with monsters attacking, and again, colored spandex wearing heroes saving the day and such. So other than that, but yeah, uh it's an interesting world. So next, music. I do like the music in King Oger. Like each country has its kind of again, going back to the world building, so each country also has like its background theme, and each King Oger has a theme song. Each King Oger or each ranger has a theme song, not really a character song, I would say, because for me, like a character song would be the actors and actresses singing their own songs, in character. But like each theme song that is associated with each King Oger, like Inferno, for example, like it's such a banger, you know. And even in like the movie, like that epic battle between Gira and his ancestor, you know, so epic, really. And like try and fight, I believe. So basically, um Yama's theme song or background theme song, when especially when battle, it's badass. You have stuff like that. So again, like each character's theme song is also like, again, it adds to that immersion in that world. So again, like how music in general, when used in TV and movies, like evokes emotion in the viewers, King Oger uses that to full effect, and I love it. Now, speaking of characters, so like I probably should have talked about the characters first, but uh again, characters, interesting. Now, when we talk about Super Sentai, we typically think of, because the Red Ranger is the leader, and for for the most part, again, Red Rangers are, because of their status, they are the main protagonists of the show. And there have been a lot of red centric Super Sentais. You probably wouldn't notice that a lot in the Showa era, probably until like some earlier Heisei Super Sentais, where yeah, the red is the leader, but he's not portrayed as a main character. Like he doesn't stand out too much. Well, I could mention like a couple of exceptions, like for example, Hikari Sentai Mask Man's red mask. Like he has a very deeper plot to him, involving his relationship with supposedly a member, an enemy. So like they have this like Romeo and Juliet vibe to them. uh Again, because of that, like he stands out a bit more compared to his teammates. But in general, like again, Showa era Reds and up until like earlier Heisei Reds, they are the leaders but not necessarily the main characters. However, there are some red centric Sentai shows that really, really take the concept well, and like the execution is just like amazing, perfect, even. Best example, Shinkenger. Again, that's one of the reasons why I love Shinkenger. Although, like yes, the red is the main character, but like each of the other rangers, like they do complement the Shinken Red very well. However, in King Oder, even if Gira is our main protagonist, like all of the other King Oder members have their own strong personalities that stand out. Again, for all intents and purposes, Gira becomes the leader in a way, but they don't really have to acknowledge that Gira is the leader because they're all leaders in their own right, given that they are kings. The only difference is that the machine. So the King Oger Robo, yeah, the main component is the God Kuwagata, but other than that, there's no set leader for the team. And again, like each character in King Oger, like they have their own backstories, they have their own badass moments. Again, for example, so Rita being my favorite character, like she has a lot of moments where even when she's not the focused character, like uh that random scream every now and then, like it gets you, but like you suddenly focus your attention on her. And again, like episode 38, so my personal favorite episode of all time, or at least my personal favorite King Oger episode ever. So like when the other kings get their focus episodes, you focus on them. I mean, sure, Gira has something to say in the episode, here and there, but you still focus on those other characters. I guess personally, like the weakest member of the King Ogres in terms of like character would be Jeremy. Basically, like after his Bagnarak struggle, after his mother's quote unquote reappearance, you don't get to see much of Jeremy in focus. Like he's become more of a wingman recently, but again, when you see his focus episodes, well, he does okay in my opinion. But again, he's not as strong. Like again, like the impact that Rita has on probably every single King Oger viewer, that I would argue that Rita could probably the most popular character in the show, but that could be my personal opinion as well. Like again, it's also interesting to see someone like Kaguragi, who is uh, for supposedly a hero, like he's very scheming, like he does things that would make you question, like should he actually considered a hero. But he has his own personal backstory, and like again, it's a very interesting explanation as to why he acts like that. And even Himeno, like I remember her actually, like she was able to wipe the floor with Jeremy at one point. Like Jeremy did not see that coming. Like, wow. Yeah, it was a very uh, it was a it was an episode during Jeremy's earlier appearances, but when he made Himeno angry, like she just wiped the floor with his face. That is how badass Himeno can be, despite acting all like girly and stuff. But yeah, you can never judge a book by its cover, really. But again, each and every character has their own like defining traits, their own backstories that make them as interesting as the supposed main character, which is Gira. Well, of course, Gira has a very interesting story to him that I personally like, but again, he doesn't overshadow the rest of the team. Uh, in a way, they can complement each other, but at the same time, they're also separate. They're also individuals, which is why, well, in terms of like a team dynamic, I do think that the King Ogres are more interesting than the Shinkengers. I know I'm comparing these two again, but I think for a good reason. So like the Shinkengers, like they complement Takeru very well, and like he again like uh does the same to each character or each ranger, but like it's still centered, on Takeru. So Takeru is still the center focus of the show. But with King Oger, while especially when it's needed the most, they're a very cohesive unit, but it's more like synergizing like their individual strengths, like you know let's say for example Gira, or when the fighting happens, like each ranger handles their own, but when they come together, they're more powerful. Again, like individually, like you see them fighting, they're powerful on their own, and I would consider like King Oger to be one of the most powerful Sentai teams in terms of, again, like combat abilities. So again, each ranger can handle their own, but when they work together, they're much more powerful. That's the dynamic that makes me very interested in them. So yeah, that's one thing. Now, uh, again, well, maybe talking about some things that I personally haven't liked so much. I'm not, to be completely honest, I'm not a fan of like the King Ogre's design. We're talking about the mecha here, by the way. Like the suits of the King Ogres, very nice, but again, talking about like the main mecha, I mean, it's all right, like, but you know, it's not my favorite. I think there are a lot of better looking mechas out there. Uh, what the only actual mecha that I like in King Oger would be the God King Caucasus. But I mean, again, in general, they're okay, but uh, you know, it's not the main reason why I like King Oger so much. Like you don't actually even see the mechs get used as often as you know you would expect. Again, because basically the King Ogres are so powerful on their own that you don't usually need the mechs. That's how strong they are, right? They're able to hold their own, and the enemies don't actually even, uh, probably during the Bagnarak period, yeah, they do have a lot of giant battles, but recently, not so much. you're focused more on like the story. Again, which is why I am so invested in King Oger. Like basically it just boils down to a really really great story, to say the least. And like everything else would just be cherry on top, again, but like a very very good story, an interesting world building, such unique characters that stand on their own but also complement each other at the same time. So again, everything about King Oger just, you know, is on a completely new level, like I've said earlier. So, these are some of the reasons why I think King Oger may be the best Super Sentai show of all time. At least for now. Who knows? Maybe, in a few years, uh, we might see some more Sentai shows that could at least match King Oger, or who knows, maybe one day there would be a story that would top uh, King Oger. But for what it does, and for what it did until now, and what it's still doing, yeah, I would say King Oger is still on top. So what do you guys think? Is King Oger the GOAT for you? Or do you have another greatest Super Sentai of all time? So anyways, let me know down in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and please do leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell so you get the latest from JEFusion. This has been Philip, and I'll see you in the next one.